Yes.
Sorry about that, folks. My apologies. Technology, the wonderful, wonderful use that it is. So just to reiterate again, thank you for joining us here today. Thank you for seeing my slides. Thank you for your interest in KendoReact. My name is John Bristow, as I said, and joining me today are my colleagues Eric and Carl, and we'll be going through KendoReact. This is the R1 2019 product release webinar, so you're in the right space. As I said before, if you need to find out more information about KendoReact, you can go ahead and find us up on Twitter, which is at KendoReact, or visit our webpage, which is KendoReact.com. There you'll find all our information that I cited earlier. So as part of this webinar, and as part of most of our webinars, we are using a Twitter hashtag called KendoReact. If you go ahead and ask your questions using this hashtag, we'll endeavor to make sure that our engineers and folks on this team will go ahead and answer those questions. And the reason why this is important is because we'll be giving away to a lucky winner one of a great prize we have available, which is a drone that, pretty cool little drone device here that we'll be giving away to a lucky winner for the best question. And we'll be providing the winner details of that question at the conclusion of this webinar, after which we will be publishing a blog post along with some questions that have been asked by folks like yourself. So KendoReact is a product that we have available. It's a set of UI controls for specifically React developers. It's a new product that we have available in the marketplace, and it features a whole host of wonderful UI controls for you to use in your React applications. If you haven't done so already and visit our website, you'll see something that looks like this. This is basically our webpage that gives you a rundown of the components that we have available. It features very rich and powerful native UI and data visualization components. So when I say native UI and data visualization components, what I mean are components that are built from the ground up, from scratch, targeting React. These are components that we have a lot of experience building through Kendo UI itself. And the reason why we feel like these are the best components for React developers is because they leverage a lot of the experience we have as an organization building UI components for the industry for many, many years. Our components for KendoReact are vast and very, very powerful. As you can see, we have a number of different visualization components for charts and graphs. We have rich UI components for building out aspects of an application through a conversational UI known as our chat component. We have a number of different other components as well for entering dates, utilizing drop-down lists. We have input components for form entry, layout, a powerful grid component, and many more. These and other components are great for building out the aspects of your application in React. And going forward, we have a number of great announcements in our latest release that I think you're really going to love. These and other components are comprised of the package KendoReact itself, and we have samples and documentation throughout that gives you a rundown of what's available there. As part of this webinar, I want to make sure that your questions are answered. So again, use that hashtag. Myself, Carl, and Eric will be online during this live webinar to answer them, as well as show you a range of demos that highlight the greatest and best features of those components. And with that, what I'd like to do now is turn things over to Eric, who's going to provide you with a rundown of the latest features that we have inside of KendoReact. So let me go ahead and switch presenters here over to Eric. And Eric, the floor is yours.
All right, let's see here. Make sure I got the right monitor presenting. Can you guys see my screen?
We can. You're good to go.
All right. Yeah, and I'm gonna present from this unexpanded view of PowerPoint because I'm gonna have to go over all the different new features inside KendoReact and switch back and forth from StackBlitz. So a few of the new components that we have are the mask text box, the window dialog, which is different from the normal dialog that you may have worked with in KendoReact before, and that is in some of our other JavaScript tools. We have a toolbar, which is just a way to kind of compose different buttons and button groups together into one unit. We have drop-down buttons and split buttons, and those are all new components that we've released just recently and are just now hitting the website. And actually, if our releases are not the same as some of the other Kendo UI products, they actually they don't all come out at one time. So some of these components have already been out for a while, so you may have already seen them on the website. A few of the other features that we have are the filter menu, column menu, and frozen columns. Those are pretty self-explanatory, and a few other options here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get us started into a StackBlitz demo, and I want to just show you how to kind of add one of your components to a StackBlitz demo. Now, what I've done here is that I've just, if you haven't worked with StackBlitz before, and I can show you really quick here how to basically create a new project for any React project. So if you go to StackBlitz, on the front page, you have the option to choose from an Angular project, a React project, or whatever you want. And it's really just one click. One click gets you started, and you can dive right into writing React code. Now, I'm going to switch back over to my other screen because they start you out with a little bit more boilerplate, and I actually want to have a very plain project going on here. So in order to start adding KendoReact to the project, the first thing that I typically do is I go over to the, whatever component I'm using, I'll go to the category for that component. So we're going to start with a mask text box. And what I'm actually going to do is go to the inputs overview, because that's going to give me some of the dependencies that I'm going to need to install. Now, if you were working in a regular project, you know, a regular Node project or a React project, you would probably use npm install to just to install these dependencies. What I'm just going to do is just copy the dependencies by themselves and go over here and paste them in. And you can paste them in 2 at a time if you want. It's no big deal. And that's basically going to add the masked inputs to my project. So that's very easy. All of the KendoReact dependencies are very easy to add to any project. And at this point, I can now go and start playing with these in my application. The first thing I want to do here is, well, we're going to go ahead and import we have mask text box, which we want to import from inputs. So let me go ahead and add that here. So we have mask text box, and we're going to import that from, and we can just grab this name right here. All right. So that's pretty much all you need to get going. We've added the dependency. We've now imported the mask text box. And now what we want to do is go down here and just actually start building the actual component. We want to go ahead and self-close that one. And if we go back and look at the mask text box, we can see we can get a kind of an idea of how to add this to our project. So if we look at view source here, we see that mask text box takes in 2 inputs, or what we call props, inside of React. So let's go ahead and add those. All right. So now we see our mask text box taking shape here. And what I would tell you about the mask text box is that what it's good for is adding phone numbers to a website. So being able to have an input that formats correctly and also requires certain numbers or characters. And if we go over here and look at the masked values, we'll see that the 9 allows us to have a digit 0 through 9 or a space, and the 0 allows us to have just a regular digit 0 through 9. So let's go ahead and look at that real quick. So if I want to format this to look like a phone number, then I'm just going to add 3 zeros here and then 4 more. And I actually want to get rid of these 9s because I don't want them to be able to add spaces here. All right, and then we'll just put a default phone number in here. All right, so if we save that, now we can see that we've got a mask text box here. And if we go and start playing with this, we have, it makes sure that we stay to the format and that we only enter the characters that we actually want to. Now, this is a great, nice little demo that I have going here, but I'm going to go ahead and skip to some other demos that I have in StackBlitz already that allow you to see a little bit more going on, so I don't have to sit here and type for everybody over and over. So if we go back here, let me go ahead and pull up another demo here. I'm going to go ahead and kill this one. I just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen okay. Is the font and everything okay for everyone, and can they see the preview pane all right?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so here I've set up 3 different mask text boxes. Basically, one for a phone number, one for a driver's license, and one for a social security number. Now, they're all very easy to work with, and you can provide a default value or not provide a default value. And the thing that I like about it is the ability, for instance, if I want someone to enter a driver's license, here in California, our driver's license start with usually a letter first and then a bunch of numbers afterwards. So that's very easy to set up as the mask here. So the L, if we go back to our masks here, just says require letter A through Z. Nice. So we can add the L and then a dash and then a bunch of numbers. Now, if we don't want the dash, we can remove that. All right, so a driver's license might look like this here. And if you noticed, the mask input comes with validation already working. Now, the demo that I showed before, I hadn't brought in some of the different styling. And I'm actually sorry, I was going to add the styling to the other project, but pretty much all you have to do is, if you go back over to the components page, we can go down to styling, overview, and here you can see all the different themes that we have. So we have a default theme, a bootstrap theme, and a material theme. And it's just as easy as kind of copying this out and pasting it right here into the dependencies. So we've already got that pasted in here. And let me go ahead and show you how I've set that up in the HTML. Actually, I don't have it set up in the HTML. Normally, you would have your style set, added right here with a style tag in the HTML. But in React, and actually, you'll see some of the demos on KendoReact doing it that way. The way that I prefer to do it is actually just to import it right here in the JS file. The reason why you might see that in the demos that way is because we pull all of our StackBlitz demos from a repo. So you'll see some funky stuff sometimes going on with the demos. You'll see a lot of dependencies already installed, and you'll also see that they've added the style a different way. They'll actually have it a little style tag right here, and that's fine and good, but I'd rather do it this way. So basically, after you add the default theme dependency, all you have to do, and I'll show you right here where you can get this information. So you can find the imports for all of the different, you have the default theme, and really to use default rather than bootstrap or material, all you have to do is change out this word right here. So if I wanted to use the material, obviously I would have to go and add the material theme first, and then I could just change this to material. But I don't have that one installed right now, so we're just going to go with the default theme. But you can find all of the imports and all the dependencies and everything you need for adding your theme right here on the styling page. So let's get back over to our demo. So we've seen how to add the theming, and we've seen how to add the dependencies over here. So after that, you're basically just, what I like to do is just go over to the actual components page where we have masked inputs, and just you can either grab one of the current StackBlitz demos, you can view the source, and that way you can get kind of help in getting started off. So as you can see here, I've created 3 different ones, and this is great. I'm going to go ahead and add a social security number in here. I'm going to try not to add mine. So we've seen an example of the masked input. We've seen validation and kind of how it works with the styles. If you did not have these styles installed, you just wouldn't get some of that extra styling here and some of the validation. It wouldn't show up. So we want to leave that intact. But I want to take you to a little bit more complex example of a masked input working with an actual form. But first I want to ask, I just want to make sure that I'm not going too fast. This is my first webinar, so as you can probably tell, I'm a little bit flustered here, but I just want to make sure that I'm not going too fast and nobody has any questions yet, because I definitely want to be able to answer any questions about how any of this stuff works. Great, let's go ahead and grab one of the other demos here. I'm going to close this one out. All right, so this one is a little bit more complex of an example. I'm just going to give you a second to kind of take a look at it here. So what we've done is we've imported the material theme this time. So I wanted to show you guys, you guys just saw what the default theme looked like and what the fields look like. Well, in this case, I've added the actual material theme instead of the default theme. And you can see over here, I've got some nice styling. And I'm going to enter in, let's see here, what is the Ghostbuster guy's name? Was it Peter Vengelman or Venkman? Phone number. Nice. So you can see that we've got validation. We've got nice styling. We are getting a little bit of help from Bootstrap on this demo. And I just basically added a Bootstrap CDN just so I can get some nice formatting over here. You can use Bootstrap or SAS, Flexbox SAS or something like that to style these, but I've used Bootstrap only to get me some nice column sizing here, nothing else. The rest of this is all Kendo UI, and if you actually removed that Bootstrap dependency, then you can see kind of, you know, we still get all the goodness right from KendoReact here, right? We still get the formatting, we still get the nice material input boxes, we get the validation, and you can see if we hit save or send, then I don't know why I have the search button here, but it should say save. But if we hit save, you'll see that if we don't have it filled out correctly, if we're not meeting the requirements of our masked input, or the characters that are supposed to be there, that it'll actually give us a warning, and we'll have to finish writing that. There we go. Form submitted. If you want to take a look one more time. So with the first two inputs, we're just adding names, and these are actually not masked inputs. And then down here for the masked inputs, we've just done some basic masking. And we've also set required equal to true. So that's why whenever we don't finish it out, if we hit send at the end, it's giving us that warning, that basic validation warning. And that's actually set up just by doing some controlled state down here. So what we've done is we've set some basic state up here that just says success, and it starts out as false. And it only equates to true once we've actually filled everything out correctly. And depending on whether that's true or false, we're going to show or hide this little form submitted piece of text down here. So that's the masked input. Let's go back to our presentation here. So window is the next one that we have. So let's go take a nice look at window. And I'm also going to pull up window over here. So the window is part of the dialogues set of components. And originally, what we had was let's go ahead and scroll down here. Originally, what we had in the window was the ability to have a modal pop up and confirm whether the user wants to continue or whether they want to submit a form or whatnot. So the normal modal has an overlay in the background that's kind of grayed out. The new window that we have doesn't have that overlay in the background. It's just basically a window that you can minimize, maximize, and resize. So I'm going to show you how that works here. So what we've done is we've set it in all these demos that I'm using here. I'm going to have a slide at the end of the presentation that has basically this page that you can get to, where you can go and try all of these demos yourself. So if I go through something too quick, you can always come back and check these out yourself, and you can also fork them to create your own copy and play around with it. So for the window, we can do things like open and close the window, and you can control it from outside the window. So not just the close button and not just the cancel buttons, which we have set up to toggle this thing, but you can also control it using state from buttons outside of the component. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So here's the button that we have that we're controlling the open and close. And all that it's doing is calling a toggle dialog function, which is setting the state to the opposite of what it currently is. Then we have down here, we have the way that we show that when we toggle these windows is using controlled state. So what we've done here is we're using conditional, I guess what you would call conditional rendering. So you can embed any expression in JSX by basically wrapping the component in a set of curly braces. This just tells us that we are executing some JavaScript here. And the double ampersand, basically, whenever you have an expression where the left value is true, the right value will be the thing that kind of shows up in the screen. So the easiest way to kind of explain this is that the true double and expression always evaluates kind of to an expression. So if the condition is true, the element following, which is this window element here, will show. And if it's not true, it won't show. So this is just an example of using controlled state with our KendoReact components, and it allows us to toggle this window open and closed. Now you'll see this kind of method of hiding and showing things in different components all throughout the KendoReact demos. And so I just wanted to explain that so that you know what's going on there. Now, inside the window, you can add other components like inputs and buttons and all sorts of stuff. So basically anything inside of this window, you can add whatever content you want in there. And then now you have a little minimized and expandable window. One thing I would note that when you expand it, that you're actually breaking out of its bounding box. So you're breaking out of this container, and it's actually taking an absolute position on the page and just full screening that component. So the reason I explain that is because people that come and play with this component at first, they might think that if they constrain this div right here around it to be a certain size, that when they expand, it's only going to take up that size of that containing div. That's not actually the case. It will actually take over the entire screen. All right, let's keep moving on through our components here. And the next one I want to talk about is the splitter. So kind of a good example of a splitter that I like to tell, if they want to know what a splitter is, and I don't have a visual to show them, is it's exactly what StackBlitz is doing here, right? We have the ability to kind of slide these splitters around in the panes for this page. So by sliding this, we can make the panes larger or smaller, right? So we have a splitter component inside of KendoReact, and the way that you get to that is through layout, splitter, and you can click on overview to start checking out all the different options that you have to play with. And you can also play with demos right here. I'm going to open up my own demo. All right. So over on the left here, you can see the dependencies that we've installed to be able to use this splitter. And it's pretty simple. It's just this one layout dependency right here. So again, splitter is part of the layout component. So by importing layout, you get to use the splitter. I've also have the default theme installed. And the way that the splitter works is that it takes a prop that basically is called panes. And we've set up panes here in the state. And the most notable thing to kind of mention here is kind of how this component works. So when you grab one of these splitters and you start moving it, what's happening is that it fires, you're firing this on layout change event. So every time that you move this, it's changing the size of the pane. So that middle and left pane are changing in size, and that's going to trigger this on layout change. So we then feed that into a method here. Let's go ahead and get rid of this console.log here. and what we're doing is that it fires after the splitter pane has been resized. And what this does is it allows for updating the pane options and triggering layout calculations, so that KendoReact and the components that are inside of splitter know how to present this changing state to you. So again, as I kind of drag it, it changes. Now, if you don't use the layout change, everything will break. So you want to make sure that when you're going onto the layout page here and you're copying code, you want to make sure that you get the on layout change added. Otherwise, it will not work. So I just wanted to point that out. The thing that I like about this component is it's really well built. When I have this on the page, I can tab and kind of control all of these splitters with my keyboard, which is great. So just tabbing around, and I would say with any of our components, a cool little test when you get it working is just to click on the page and start tabbing and kind of see what kind of accessibility options that you have. So I can make it larger, the left pane larger or smaller, and it also affects the middle pane. If I tab over, you can see that I have an indication arrow here that's pointing to the right. So if I actually hit the enter button, we're going to collapse that. And now the indicator is pointing to the left. So if I hit the enter button again, it's going to open that back up. I've set the size of each of the panes here. And I've also set the minimum amount that it opens. So if we go ahead and try and close this as far as we can, we'll see that it stops right there at 10%. It won't let me close it any more than that. And if we update this, obviously, it won't close. It'll only go to 20% now. So the splitter, you can nest the splitter. Let's go ahead and, I haven't really tried this, but we should be able to just add that in there. That didn't work too well. But if you go to more advanced examples of the splitter, you can see here, we'll open this up in StackBlitz and kind of see how this is laid out. That's the great thing about using StackBlitz for all these examples, is it's just one click away from kind of getting in and messing around with all of the source code. So here you can see that we've nested a splitter inside of another splitter. So we have orientation, which means, are they laid out horizontally or vertically? So all of these three panes up here at the top are laid out vertically, and these ones down here are laid out horizontally. And you can see how we've kind of nested them within each other. I'm not going to go too far into this, but if you want, go on to the splitter overview page, and you can open up that in StackBlitz. You can fork it, and now you have a copy that you can play with by yourself. All right, let's move on to the next one. Here's just some of the slides that went along with the splitter. So I want to show you two components that we've added just recently that are under the buttons category. And let's go ahead and take a look at the buttons here. So if you see, we have split button and we have drop down. All right. So we're going to start with the drop down button. It's just like you've probably played with in any other component library, or even with just HTML itself. It's like a select component, but we have a lot of extra little goodies that we can play with that KendoReact provides. So as you can see here, we have here's the code on the left to kind of get the drop down list working. You can the data is just all the different sizes. It's just an array of the different sizes, and on the right-hand side is the preview of what you would get with this little bit of code here. So let's go take a look at what that looks like. And I'm going to go through these ones pretty fast because then I'm also going to show you the toolbar component, which I've composed several buttons together to give us a toolbar. So here's our dependencies. I would note that if you go to the buttons overview, it is not just the button dependency that you need to add, but you also need to add the internationalization component. And actually, when you go to, if I went to go install this by itself, it would actually prompt me to also install the internationalization dependency. So we have two of them that we're loading here. But all you have to bring in as an import is drop-down list from KendoReact dropdowns. Okay, so I might have messed up there because I was telling you to install input. I was on the buttons here. That's what happens when you're flustered. Is you go over the wrong stuff, and so I'm going to go back and correct myself here. If you go to the inputs overview, you'll see that both of them here are both of the dependencies. Sorry about that. And those again, I just added them right here. And I hit enter and it added them for me. All right, so we've got the we've got the drop downs added. We've got it pulled into our import here. And basically all you have to do is add this drop down list tag. The data that we're populating our drop down with is just a list of is just an array of values. So you can take any array of values, you can pull this from the database and just basically drop it right into the data prop, and now you're going to have all of your different items in here. Now, if you were using this component, if you just started building this component on your own, I want to note a few of the problems that you might run into. So typically when you set this up, you wouldn't have added all of this stuff right here that I have. And what you would do is you would say value equals components, and that would kind of give it a default value to select by default here. Now, what if we want to be able to click on change log or click on pricing and have the dropdown remember what item we selected? So that's where we get into using controlled state. So right now we're using this component in an uncontrolled state, but we actually want to use it in a controlled state. So what controlled state really means is just that, hey, I'm using React's default state by using this.state equals, and now I can add an object in here with as many properties that I want. Now we only need to track one property right now to be able to control this thing, and that is this value property. So instead of saying value equals components and hard coding this, what I'm going to go ahead and do is say value equals this.state.value, and I've already set up my default state value here. So that's good, but it doesn't get us exactly where we need to go. It's still not going to remember which item we've selected. And by the way, this works exactly for the next component, which I'm going to show you, which is the split buttons. So what we want to do is we want to have this on change. So we want to say when this dropdown changes in any way, whenever they click on a different option, we want to handle that change. So we're going to call out to this other function here. We're going to pass the event, and we're basically going to set state. This is just a way of being able to modify the state in a React application. We're going to use the set state method. And we're going to say the value now equals whatever the event.target.value is. So event.target.value will be the actual value for pricing when I click it. That makes sense. So now, as I click on the different ones, we'll see that it changes the default selected value to change log and pricing, right? So now it's working like we want it to. So I wanted to show you that because if you go and you just work with the very basic examples that we have set up on the demos page, you may not know how to do this. And once you see one nice example of kind of how this works, of how we can work with controlled state, you're then going to kind of know how to do that with all of the components. So you can play around with that, with the different components. If I wanted to go to our split buttons demo, if I wanted to, I could set up the same pattern on this component. I'm not going to right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and show you how the split button is different. So here's the split button. So if we looked at before, we had a drop down, and then here's the split button. So it uses a different component name, but everything else is pretty much the same. And actually, if you opened up both of these next to each other, let's go ahead and do this real quick. We're going to open up buttons, split button, and we'll also open up the drop down button. So as you look at these two, even the demos are very similar. And if you were to walk through each of the different categories, they're almost completely identical. I've actually only found like one property that's different between the two of them. I'm not going to go over that right now, but pretty much if you know how to use the split button, you know how to use the drop down button and vice versa. So I just wanted to point that out, and you can walk through these yourself and see that it's pretty much the same docs, almost copied over. So there, if you know how to use one, you know how to use the other one. I digress. All right. So let's get back to our split button example. So you have the ability, and what I'm showing here is I'm showing how to use the split button with Font Awesome. So most people use Font Awesome as icons in their projects, especially for like prototypes. It's just the easiest kind of icon library that you can pull in and start using. So that's exactly what I'm using here, and it's really easy. We have an icon class, which you can, the easiest way to find out what all the different icons are is to just to search on Google for Font Awesome cheat sheet, and you can find all the different ones here. So again, the biggest difference between the split button and the drop down is that you have this little indicator on the right-hand side that just indicates that you can drop it down. That is pretty much the only difference that I've found. And some may say, well, why even create a split button versus a drop down? And that's kind of what I was thinking at first too, but then I realized when I started to create a toolbar exactly why it's beneficial, and I'm going to show you that next. So I'm not going to go over too much here. Everything's pretty much the same. You have a text which shows up right next to the icon, and if you were to get rid of the, let's go ahead and try and get rid of this here. There you go. See, now the icon's gone. It's just that simple. You can add it or remove it. It doesn't really matter. Your split button does not have to have icons. If you leave those out, no big deal. Let's just go ahead and get rid of all of them here so we can see that. Cool, right? All right, let's move on to the next one. The toolbar. Awesome. So this is my favorite kind of component of all the buttons. It's like taking everything you know about all the KendoReact buttons and being able to compose them all into one toolbar. So let's go ahead and open up the toolbar demo. And let's take a look at the dependencies first, just to see exactly what we need. Oh, look, one dependency, no big deal. So let's go ahead and go back to the KendoReact page real quick and look at the docs and demos. And we're going to go to buttons. So basically, the toolbar, again, is a way of composing all the different button components together into one toolbar. All of these different components you get right out of the box with just adding one dependency here. So KendoReact buttons, you add that, and now I can pull in all of these different components from the button category. Now, I just want to let you take a gander at this code real quick, kind of see how it's all set up, see how we've added a toolbar at the top. A toolbar is comprised of toolbar items, and then a toolbar item can have whatever you want inside. could have a piece of text. It could have just a regular button by itself, which is what we have here. Or we can have a button group, right? So we have several buttons all grouped as one. And that's great, especially for this type of a toolbar. Think of like an editor or even like your word processor. You have this toolbar with all the different abilities to bold something, italicize something, justification. So we want to be able to set these up in a toolbar, have these nice little separators. And then here I'm going to show you why I think the split button is great. So here's a regular drop down over here. And then here is the split button drop down. So as you can see, like it's more of a visual thing, but it works perfectly for something like this, a toolbar, to use a split button versus a drop down. And I think that this looks really, really good here. And I'm going to show you some of the kind of nuances of working with the toolbar and the split button. So I'm actually going to go over a little bit more of the split button stuff here. So one of the things that I was kind of wondering at first is how can I add these split buttons items not from here but from a property, right? A prop, if you will. So an input to the component. So if I comment that out and I type in items equals, and we use this nice little object array that we already have set up here. Plop it in right here. All right, cool. So now we have all of the items that we added from this array. We've added to this array. We have those now being fed into the split button just by adding a prop called items and passing that in. Now, one of the things that I was kind of playing around with, I thought, what if I uncommented these? Which one would take precedent? Does anyone here know or have an idea of which one would take precedence? So which one is going to show up? Is it going to be 2 buttons or is it going to be all 3? Well, let's go take a look here. It's all 3. So if you add a prop to a split item button, or a split button, if you add items to a split button, it's going to override anything that you've set up, any manual tags that you've or items that you've set up down here. So just wanted to point that out. If you have both of them for some crazy reason, the items will take precedence and it will overwrite. It's kind of like overriding a function. All right. Let's see if there's anything else in here that I can go over. I think that's pretty much it. Each button can be toggleable. So we have this button group, which is the justification. So if I click one of these, it kind of changes it to an on state. And if I unclick it, it changes it to an off state. So if you remove the ability to toggle something, obviously it's just going to be a button now. You're not going to be able to toggle it like that anymore. Yeah. See, it's just basically a rollover state, and it doesn't actually stay on when you click it. So that's the difference between toggleable. I always mess up that word. Toggleable. I'm not even sure that's a real English word, but I think we made it a word here at KendoReact. All right. Just want to pause real quick to make sure that we don't have any other questions.
Nope, we've been answering them on the back channel there, bud.
One thing else I would point out here is on our split button, what if I want to use items and I want to be able to, right? So I don't have a button. I don't have 3 buttons set up or items set up here to actually add an on-click function to. So how can I, call a different function when I click on each one of these? Let's go ahead and open up the console here. I forgot that I had this added in here. So we use the on item click, which is different from on click, right? So I made the mistake originally when kind of messing around with this component of just trying to do on click. Obviously that wouldn't work anyways, because if I had just one on click function, I wouldn't want the same function to run for all of the different buttons inside of it. So it doesn't matter whether you're getting your items from this array or whether you have them added in manually here. If you say on item click, then you can specify a function to run when any of them are clicked. But I want to be able to do something different for each one of them. So what I'm actually doing is I'm calling out to this handle split item click, and I pass the event along with it. And if you can see here, I've set up, this is not a property that's normally associated with a split button item, but I've added it just so that I can have something to be able to switch on. I don't like the idea of switching on the text or the icon because those things can be coming from the database and they might change. But I might have maybe an action or maybe you could call this func or something like that. But it's basically something that each button is going to have that'll either specify a function or something I can switch on to do something different for each one that I click. So I hope that makes sense. But if we go and we click on each one of these, we'll see that one flowed right in here to the function and switched on the item action, and it knew that we wanted to do image insert. So I just called a console log, but this could be a call to another function. For instance, I could have 3 different functions set up here, one called image insert, one called table insert, and one called link insert, and I could call those individually from here. So I just wanted to give you a good little example of not only how to set up the toolbar and how to set up like the split items, but also how to do something with each of these buttons. Because that's sometimes when you go and look at the demos, you may not see an example. Well, hey, what happens if I want to do something when I click on one of those buttons? So I wanted to add that here to the demo so that you could see how to use that. And I'm going to save this demo just as it is so that if anyone wants to go and open this up on their own and fork it, that they'll be able to see how this works and play around with it. I think that's going to be it for the toolbar. Let's move on. So the next few things we have here are the grid. So the grid is a feature that's been around in KendoReact for a while, but we have a few new features, which I think are really cool. So originally when you would use a grid, if you wanted to add a filter to a grid, what would happen is that it would just create this new row for you right here. And then you can customize this, but just right out of the box, if you just if you make it filterable, it adds a new row. And I wasn't really happy with that. I didn't like I don't like this idea that we have a row here. It kind of takes up more space. So I'm really happy with this new feature. And by the way, this is definitely something that you might want to use, but I thought, it would be nicer if it didn't take up as much space and we had a different way of kind of accessing those filter menus. And that's exactly what they've done is they've added a grid filter menu. So if you see the 3 little dots on each row here, this is just a screenshot, but I've clicked on one of these and you have the ability to sort and filter. So let's go take a look at that demo real quick. Uh-oh. Hopefully one of these works. All right. All right, so here it is in action, and we can see that we have now a little button that we can click to be able to pull up the filter. This is a little bit more advanced of a scenario here, but we've got the filters here, and we also have the ability to show and hide columns, which I think is super awesome because where I used to work, we had a very big inventory system and we had grids like this. And one of the things that we always got feedback from was, hey, I want to be able to print the screen, but I don't want to show certain rows and columns. So with this, you can filter and maybe only get the rows that have chef. And then you could also say, okay, and I also don't want to show, I don't want it to show that it's discontinued. I just want to show these 2 columns. And boom, now I've got something that I can print out for the customer, or my manager, or whatever. And it's exactly the way that I wanted it. And it shows only the things that I wanted to show. Let's go take a look at the code real quick and kind of how this is set up. Now this is going to look funky at first, but just understand that all we have is that we've got a grid tag added here, and that we're actually mapping over this columns file to get all of our different columns. So, and that gives us the ability to kind of set up this column menu and to make it dynamic, and to also be able to, whenever we interact with that menu, to be able to pass that back out and change state and be able to reflect the new changes. So I want to actually go and show you what just the basic one looks like. Should be on filtering, I think. Filter row. Oh, columns. Here we go, column menu. Let's look at a very, very simple example real quick. I'm gonna open this up in StackBlitz. Again, one of the things that I love about the new docs site for KendoReact is that everything uses StackBlitz. So being able to play around with a demo is literally just one click away, and you can get in here and start playing with all the different properties and the code and seeing exactly how to set this up in your own React application. And they do a really good job of kind of getting straight to the point, and we have lots and lots of demos. So pretty much any different configuration you can think of, all of the things that we talk about in the docs, we have a demo for almost every single thing in there. So this is a little bit, remember earlier we were mapping over all of those columns, but this is just a really quick example of how to set up those columns manually. So we have a products.json, which has product name, unit price, all these different properties. And when we create our grid, we can just create a column for whichever one we want to show. We don't have to add them all. We can just add product ID, product name, unit price, and discounted or discontinued. And we don't have to use every single one of them. But if I wanted to add a new one, it's literally just one column away. I just add a column, and let's go see what one of the other ones is. Could do reorder level. So now we got the reorder level coming through there. Pretty easy. And for the column menu, which is the thing that we're talking about, if you don't want it on all the columns, you can take it off and just maybe add it on. See, what's the best one to filter here? I think product name would be the best one. If we wanted to only use one of them, I would maybe only use this one. There we go. Now we've got the filter menu or the column menu only set up on that one. And this is what you get right out of the box with the filter with the column menu, right? All you have to do is say column menu, and you can just say true if you want to, but this is what it'll give you. And now I can change. I could say chef, all of them that contain was chef, and also gumbo. So filter that. Nice. We just get one of them. Perfect. Awesome. So if you have any questions on that, put them in the chat, and we'll answer them. Let's see what the next component we have to go over here. I think that might be one of the last ones that I have to demo. Oh, well, let's look at the grid columns locked real quick. This is a cool one too. I love this one, and this is a request that a lot of people ask for in a grid. I know from using grids where I used to work that this is something that was very, very popular, a feature that a lot of people would want to have. Now, the idea is that when you have too many, the easiest way to explain it is I have too many columns, and whenever I scroll, I want this discontinued one always to show, right? So it's very, very simple. And let's make the width a little bit smaller here so we can really get the full idea of how this works. All right. No matter where we scroll, that one column is always going to stay locked and going to stay front and center for you. And it's just one little attribute here, locked equals true. So we have a locked prop, and basically just pass in true or false. And this also can be controlled through state. So I could set up some state in a constructor up here, and I could set it default to true, but maybe I have a button on the right that says, unlock discontinued. And when I click it, it changes that state, and it would also then change that property, and then it would be false at that point, and then it wouldn't be locked anymore. Or you can just remove the whole thing, and it's not locked anymore as well. Let's see here. Yeah, so that's all the demos that I have to show, but I did want to talk to you guys about blogs.telerik.com. One thing that we've been doing, especially since I've started working on the KendoReact team, is not only writing articles about how to work with KendoReact and how to work with all of the different components and how to get started, but we've also been focusing really hard on getting content out there to show you just how to work with React itself. So we've got articles on creating React, on Create React App 2.0, which came out back in October. I have an article where I went over the the JavaScript survey from 2018, and I've talked about what it means for us as React developers. I also have a few articles that go over how to work with React hooks. If you don't know what React hooks are, it is, if you've ever heard of Redux, a lot of people that build React applications, in order to manage state in a very, I guess, a very managed way, is to use Redux. Now, the problem that a lot of people will talk about is, I don't want to add Redux to my project just to do some very basic state management. And what hooks, one of the things that hooks does is it gives you the ability to interact with state and effects so that you don't have to bring Redux into your project. You can actually manage basic UI level state with hooks and set state. And it's kind of like, it's kind of an abstraction over set state. And you can also do things like add a reducer to your components and not have to bring in Redux. So I can manage state, I can do it with reducers just like I do in Redux, but I can do it right in React Core. So these are some really good articles on React state and using hooks. So and we're going to try and create a lot more blog posts that are not only talking about our product and how to use our product, but also just how to use React itself. Because just like when we released Angular at first, a lot of people that were using our components, they might have been new to Angular, they might not have. But we want to be able to help you as we release these React products to not only learn how to use our products, but we want to give you some support and show you how to use React itself. Yep, there's just a little screenshot of one of our blog posts. And I'm going to kick it back over to John because he's going to go over just a few more of these components that are also brand new, which is the tree view and the upload.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen now. Great, so a couple of components that Eric didn't have enough time to share. We've been working on very diligently recently is the tree view component. This is a very useful component when building in a hierarchical structure into your application. Allows for things like drag and drop. It gives a very nice and orderly way to display this data within an application. So keep an eye out for that. And then another one, which is extremely powerful and very popular, is the upload component. So this is one that allows you to upload a variety of files to a server through a upload dialog, allows you to select multiple files, gets updates as they're uploading, etc. So those two components, keep an eye out for that. What I'd like to do now is spend just a couple of minutes talking to Carl about the KendoReact roadmap. So Carl is our PM for the KendoReact team. And Carl, are you on the call still?
Yes, I am.
All right, perfect. So I've got to start detailing some new components that are coming down the pipe.
Yeah, so one nice thing about what we're doing with KendoReact is that we do take advantage of continuous delivery. So everything that I'm chatting about or have shown here today is something that we're working on over the next couple of months, but you don't necessarily have to wait until we announce R2 to be able to take advantage of these. But some of the components that we're working on specifically would be the editor, so a rich text editor is in the pipe, the datetime picker, which actually I saw a couple of questions pop up in the questions feed around that. So that's another component that we'll be taking a look at, alongside with the notification component, and then the sortable framework. Sortable, for those of you that are not familiar with some of the terminology that we have in some of our other JavaScript libraries, is essentially a framework that can be tied into our components or just generic React components that you have written yourself. That allows you to reorganize elements on a page. So for example, reordering rows in a grid. So these are some of the new components that we'll be kind of focusing on, and there might be a couple other ones that pop in here and there as well. Another couple of important features that we'll be looking into over the next couple months would be adding checkboxes alongside with some other features within the tree view component. So it's a brand new component that we released today, but I just wanted to highlight that we will be, of course, addressing new features for this component as well. Another big thing coming out for the grid would be column virtualization. So right now we have row virtualization, but we'll be working on column virtualization along with a couple other features, but this is one of the bigger ones. And then an item that we didn't necessarily pop into here, but it's something that you can check out, is customization options that we have in the date picker today. So the date picker actually allows you to take full control over the input, the pop-up component, as well as the calendar that appears within the date picker, and allows you to use the custom renderer for that. And we'll be looking to extend that functionality into all of our components over this year. And that means that you can truly customize these components beyond just the configuration options that we have. You can even provide custom renderers for individual pieces of the component. So that's something that we'll be slowly adding into components as we go along. But for a preview of what that looks like, you can check out the date picker component today. And that's kind of what we have in the pipe. And of course, we want to make sure that we address any and all features and feedback that you have. So we've already mentioned the feedback portal, but please continue to use that because that allows us to be able to update the roadmap and make sure that we're delivering what you need.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Carl. Really appreciate it. That's great stuff. For those of you who are unaware, I'll just show you briefly here the feedback portal. You can go check out this at feedback.TeleReact.com/KendoReact UI. This is where we get the items and suggestions from you, the community, using our products to talk a little bit more about that. And if you're interested, go check that out. You can vote up items up or down, etc. This is basically how we drive a lot of the product going forward. So great stuff. So if you want to find out more about the roadmap, go check it out at this URL here. We keep this up to date as we release, and lots more information will hopefully be there soon. As Eric alluded to, he was using a Dev.to link, which listed a whole bunch of resources. If you're interested in those resources, those demos, you can find them up on this page here. He'll be keeping this up to date over the next day or so, just with the latest and greatest. And so if you're interested in those demos, go ahead and check those out. Some other resources just before we wrap things up. We do have a channel dedicated to Kendo UI. Kendo UI is our product name for a set of JavaScript libraries we have for jQuery, Vue, Angular, and of course there's KendoReact as well. You'll find videos listed up there that walk you through a whole host of demos featuring Kendo UI as well as KendoReact. So make sure to subscribe and become a watcher or listener now. And finally, if you want to find out more about Kendo UI itself, you can go visit our website, which is at teleReact.com/KendoUI. Great stuff listed there. Just before we wrap up, I'd like to remind you that we have a release webinar featuring Kendo UI. The R1 2019 release webinar is next week on Tuesday, January 22nd at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. If you want to go ahead and sign up, you can go ahead and do so using the URL listed at the bottom of the page there. And you can hear all the great stuff that we have shipping available for jQuery, Angular, Vue, and of course, some of the stuff you saw here for KendoReact. So make sure to subscribe to our channel. Make sure to for the webinar. You won't miss a beat. Finally, and because we get this often a lot, you can sign up for a free trial. So if you visit our website and download the free trial there, you'll see a dialog that looks like this. We're just simply looking to connect with you about what you're looking to utilize the product for. So free trial sign up is pretty easy, gets you 30 days of free technical support. And because it's often asked as well, we list this on our site. These are some of the support offerings that we offer as part of KendoReact. We've gone through a lot of the Q&A, and please continue to ask questions using the hashtag or the Twitter account that we have available. We really appreciate your questions. Because of sensitivity of time, I want to make sure that I want to thank you all for joining us here today. And we look forward to seeing you during the next release webinar for KendoReact. Until next time, my name's John. I'd like to thank Carl and Eric for joining me here today, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.